Hi, and welcome to the Maybe I Can podcast. I'm your host, Debbie Weiss, and thank you so much for joining me today. I got to tell you that I look forward to these talks that you and I are having with each other. I feel like you're my friend, and you and I are just both trying to figure out this game of life. And it is, I wish you could talk back to me. Actually, you could. You can always send me an email at debbie@debbierweiss.com or message me on Instagram at debbie.r.weiss. But you know what I mean, talk in real time. But that's another topic. Before I jump into today's topic, something else that came to my mind as I hit record is an email that I got the other day from a company. And you know, as a podcaster, you get a lot of emails, solicitation emails. People want to produce your podcast, make it better, get it out into the world, all the things. So I don't even know why I opened this up, because usually those I just delete, honestly, without reading. But I opened this up, and it wasn't for any of those reasons. It was actually to have AI do my podcast for me. I mean, from start to finish, I don't even have to be involved. They would just learn my voice, learn my topics, and it would be an AI produced Debbie. And as we know, when we're looking, especially on Facebook, right? You're always looking. My mother's always calling me and saying, "Did you see what they said about blah, blah, blah?" And I said, you know what? No, you can't believe that. Everything looks so real and so authentic. But I feel like the one thing that's missing is that human connection, that heart. I don't think that AI could tell it like I can tell it. Sure, it'll sound better. There won't be as many pauses or as many ums or like this kind of thinking. And I guess that's good. That's certainly more polished and professional. But is it real? That's what the question is. And you know what? I'd miss chatting with you if AI was going to do that for me. So with that said, if you've been listening for a while, you know that many times my podcast is based on what's happening in my own personal life. Because we all share this human experience. We're all trying to figure out the game of life. And so I think if I'm struggling with it, maybe you are too. And so I want to share what happened. This week, I had one of those uncomfortable moments where I realized I still had some work to do in different areas that I thought I had mastered. Like, these are things I teach, and yet here I am, the teacher, but I'm also the student. Because, hey, there's a lot of things that we just don't master and we need reminding. And this is one that I needed reminding on, so maybe you do too. So here's the lesson. For years, I've talked about taking responsibility for your life. It's something that I realized, probably 12 years ago or so, that I had a victim mentality and I didn't know what that meant. But in short, it means that you're blaming everyone and everything else for your current circumstances and just pointing fingers at everyone. And boy, I did that for the longest time. And then I learned this formula called E plus R equals O, and I've talked about it before. Event plus response equals outcome. So that means an event happens, and let's just say, in my past, my father having a stroke, plus my reaction equals the outcome. Now, what kind of reaction am I going to have that makes my father having a massive stroke? And this is, I don't even know, 45 years ago now. What's going to make that better? I can't make it better. I can't undo my father's stroke. However, I can, by responding in different ways, certainly change the outcome moving forward. But that's not true. Because however we respond, changes the outcome. And so I felt like I had that all figured out. And then this week I thought, I have not been doing that with my current situation. So what's my current situation? If you've been listening, you've heard it week after week because, hey, I talk about my life and this is my life. I am a captive insurance agent for over 30 years for a very large insurance company. And it's a very long story, but 2 months ago, out of the blue, we were told that at the end of this year, we no longer will have health and disability and benefits. And beginning in January of 2028, our income will be reduced by 40%. There's a way to earn it back. They can't give us the exact numbers of how to do that. Numbers meaning, you sell this many auto policies and this many homeowners policies, this many life policies, etc. And each year, those numbers could change. So they basically have control over the numbers. You have control whether or not you can make those numbers. Just looking historically at the past, if I earned back 20% of that 40% cut, it would honestly be a miracle. So I have to go into it thinking, how will I move forward with a 40% cut in addition to paying for my own benefits, which, at my age, it isn't cheap. Now I'm counting the days till I'm 65 when I can go on Medicare and at least save some money. And yesterday, as I was talking to my cousins, I realized I'm still blaming. I'm blaming the company for putting me in this position. I'm blaming myself for financial decisions I've made over the years. Because if I made different decisions, maybe this 40% reduction wouldn't be so difficult for me. I'm blaming I don't know who that all of a sudden I need surgery and maybe 2 surgeries for spinal problems. I'm having cervical spine surgery. Actually, by the time you hear this, I will have had the surgery. Right now, it's a week before the surgery. And then once I recover from that, there is a possibility that I need to also have lumbar spine surgery. And so I'm blaming my circumstances. All these things are coming down on me at once. And as I was talking, it's like, you all of a sudden hear yourself and you realize, wait a second, I'm doing it all over again. Maybe I don't notice because it's different time and different circumstances, but it kind of stopped me in my tracks. And here's the thing. Even when I take responsibility, none of it was helping me move forward. As a matter of fact, all of it was keeping me stuck in this loop of feeling sorry for myself and woe is me and what am I going to do? So I have to accept my reality, right? But there's a difference between accepting your reality and actually changing it. These things, it's a two-parter, right? First, the responsibility, taking responsibility is the starting line. Blame says, whose fault is this? As I've already told you, I've been down that path. But instead, responsibility asks, what part of this belongs to me? And I can always go back and certainly, like I said, certain financial decisions, which I'll talk about one of them in a second. I made those choices. It's over. It's done. Blaming myself, not going to do me any good. So now the next step is accountability, because accountability says, okay, I've accepted this. These are my circumstances. Now, what the heck am I going to do about it? These are very different questions. Instead of saying, whose fault is this? To move forward and say, well, what part of this belongs to me? And now what am I going to do about it? Very different. So Here's an example. I can accept that the company has changed my future income. That's responsibility. I have to accept that. It is what it is. Stop blaming. But until I decide how I'm actually going to replace that income or lower the expenses or whatever it is, whatever combination I need to do to move forward, I'm not practicing accountability. So I can admit I made financial decisions I wish I hadn't. That's responsibility. But accountability is asking, what financial decisions can I make today that my future self will thank me for? Think about one area of your life where you've accepted reality. But have you stopped there? Or have you moved into action? So here's the deal. This one is so hard for me to admit. It's about my house. I don't even know. Probably, oh my goodness, well, at least 3 times in the past, when Gary, my husband, was alive, I brought up, I think we need to sell the house. My house is very expensive. We bought it 27 years ago, thinking, as I think many people do when they're starting out, oh, our income will just continue to increase. It might be a little stretch now, and it'll get easier in the future. Well, I'm not going to go into the backstory, but in 27 years, it never got easier. The expenses have only gone up, and it's costing me an arm and a leg. But I love my house. I absolutely, 27 years later, I love my house. I love where I live. I don't want to leave it. I have talked myself in and out of selling my house over and over again. And each time I would decide, okay, I'm going to do it. And I would contact a realtor, and she would come out and she would run the numbers, and then I'd start looking at other places to go, and I'm thinking, I want to figure out instead how to stay here. And I say all these things that makes it seem like, yeah, that's ridiculous to move. You just actually a few weeks ago had a new air conditioner. I have new furnaces. I had to do a new septic system 6 years ago. I have a whole house generator I put in for Gary. I have all these things, and now I'm going to go somewhere else, and these things won't necessarily be done, and I'm going to have to incur the same expenses. That's my rationalization, by the way, of how I talk myself out of it. Deep down, every time that I thought about it over the past, of course I knew moving would definitely make my financial life easier. But then I didn't do it because maybe now's not the right time. Maybe the market will improve. I don't think that, Gary could handle this move emotionally, or my kids are in school, or it's too much work and I'm comfortable here, or maybe next year. You get the idea. I wasn't lacking information. I was lacking accountability. How many times do we already know what we need to do? I've known it, but we're simply not doing it. We're not ready for whatever reason. And we tell ourselves these stories that sound so reasonable. Sometimes they are reasonable, but they also keep us exactly where we are. Have you ever had a time where you're just collecting information instead of making a decision? Is there something you've known for years that you've convinced yourself you'll do it someday? Quote unquote, someday? You get it. It's hard. These decisions are hard. And when we blame, it keeps us looking backwards, right? It keeps us saying they shouldn't have done that. Maybe they'll change their minds. Maybe they'll all of a sudden decide that they're going to give me some huge sum of money to be done, like all the things. And I'm not saying that the company didn't make decisions I disagree with. I guess I understand from a company perspective, but anyway, that doesn't matter. I'm allowed to feel disappointed. And I think I'm allowed to feel angry. And I've felt a lot of different feelings over the last couple of months. But every minute that I spent replaying these decisions, the company's decisions, my own past decisions, it's a minute that I wasn't building my future. Reflecting back and blaming, it keeps us stuck. There's a difference between processing disappointment and staying there, living there. Blame focuses on what someone else did or what you did in the past, where accountability focuses on what I do next. And that's where I am right now. Sometimes accountability sounds intimidating, like we have to reinvent our lives overnight. And I got to tell you, that's me. Like I make a decision and I am all in. People sometimes can't believe, like, you did what? I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. That's just who I am. I know some people have such a hard time making the first step, but once I'm ready to go, I go. But it doesn't have to be like that. Accountability is often surprisingly very small, right? It could start with just making one phone call to inquire about something, or one appointment, or filling out one application, having a difficult conversation, one decision, just any kind of movement. So personally, here's what accountability looks like for me today. Today, and I mean today, because it's only yesterday that I had this realization that I was stuck in the blame and not moving forward. So today, I am preparing for my surgery. I'm looking honestly at my finances. I am also looking for a place to move. I actually saw several places over the last few days, and I made an offer on something yesterday. I have to buy something before I sell. It's a whole long story why, but nowadays contingency loans are not a thing, or if they are, they hold too much strings attached that are a little too scary. And I'm making decisions that I've postponed. Not because all of a sudden I have all the answers, because I can tell you I do not. But here's the thing. Waiting isn't an answer. What would accountability look like for you today? This week, I want you to pay attention to your thoughts. Took me a while. But whenever you catch yourself saying, if only, or I can't because, one of my favorites, when things settle down, which, P.S., come on, do they ever really settle down? Or, I'll do it someday. I want you to pause. So remember, if only, I can't because, when things settle down, or I'll do it someday, or some variation of those sentence fragments, if that's right grammatically, I want you to ask yourself, is this responsibility or is this accountability? And then choose one action, even if that one action only takes 5 minutes. I don't think this lesson that I'm talking about is about becoming harder on ourselves. Because let me tell you, what I have done to myself, the berating and the blaming, it's absolutely awful, and I never would do it to anybody else. So this realization doesn't come with me being angry at me. No, it's exactly the opposite. It's about being honest enough to stop pretending that we're stuck when we still have choices. We still have choices. I might not like to be in this position, but here's the thing. We can't change the past. I can't change what the company decided to do. I can't undo financial decisions I made a year ago or years ago. But you and I can always decide what we're going to do next. And maybe that's what accountability really is. Not punishing ourselves for yesterday, choosing today's next step. So if you're feeling stuck, don't ask yourself, whose fault is this? Don't even stop with, what's my responsibility? Continue on and ask yourself one more question. What would accountability look like today? And then do that thing. Do that one thing. Because maybe that's where change really begins. And I can tell you, and you know this yourself, making that step, it changes everything. You believe maybe there is something else that's possible. Maybe I can get through this. And I have to say that I've talked about this before. I keep on my phone a list called a Maybe I Can list. And it's a list of all the difficult things that I've gotten through in my life, where at the time when they happened, I thought I could never survive. How would I ever survive? And I did. Not only did I survive, but I also thrived. And reminding myself that you can do hard things is helpful. And it propels me forward to make that first step. Let's do it together.